This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by The Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzo. I'll be your host for this wonderful ride. Today we're going to talk about the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, first and foremost, why everybody in the fire service needs to understand how important NFFF has been and is, and it doesn't matter if you're on-call paid, volunteer, chief. This organization has its roots and its hands in a lot of things that really regard firefighter health, wellness, and safety. And we have a very special guest to talk all about it with us today. Welcome to the program, Chief Dr. Danny Kistner, who is with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. First and foremost, Chief, I don't know if I should call you Chief. I'm going to call you Dr. Danny. How about that?
That's fine. That'll work.
Well, welcome to the program. We are super excited to have you on because you just were appointed a new position there with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. We'll talk a little bit about that. And your journey, 40 years in the fire service, your new position as Director of Fire Service Programs for NFFF kind of brought you to this, your background brought you to this, but you were a former chief of the McKinney Fire Department. You've been an advocate for firefighter health and safety, adaptive leadership, and also like pre-hospital medical services throughout your career. Board member of the IFC Safety, Health, and Survival section. There's a lot you've done in your career, and it's come to this new position. Again, welcome to the program. And how are things going in the new position?
Oh my gosh, it is incredible. I just can't believe the experience of people I'm meeting. Everybody's so pumped and charged and so appreciative of being in the positions they are for the foundation. When I retired from the fire service, I was talking to my wife and I said, there's only one job or one place I would want to work full time, and that would be for the NFFF. And I feel extremely blessed that I was able to get this position. After I retired, I did go into private consulting for a little bit, and then I had the opportunity to respond to an RFP for the foundation for an advocate manager. And I responded to that. So probably since about December 2024, through that next 12 months, I was a contractor for the NFFF. And then one of my mentors and somebody I really respect, John Tippett, who had the position of director prior to me, he decided it was time to retire, spend some more time with his family. Although we all know John Tippett is staying actively engaged with everything. He stepped down, and I feel fortunate and blessed that I was able to get that position, which I started in March of 2025. So hadn't been there long. I think it's going very well, but I'm still learning. I'm kind of in an uncomfortable, unknown position. I still don't know what I don't know, but what I do know has been great.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of growth, right? Getting to a position of being comfort and uncomfort, right? And that's where growth happens. But you mentioned, you're surrounded by a bunch of individuals who are supposedly retired. And we all know that that's BS because, we have Gary Kirchbaum, we got, Ron Sarnicki, obviously Victor Stagnero, Frank Lieb. I mean, all these individuals who have had very successful careers in the fire service are now stepping up into, NFFF, FRCE, for a very good reason. I mean, what's the passion behind, the NFFF and especially your own passion? Why did you want to get involved with them?
Yeah, so that it's simple but complex at the same time. But at the end of the day, we all believe in improving firefighter survivability and quality of life. For me, I have this vision of what the fire service could be. And I feel that everything, all my experiences in life up to this point has led me to where I can have a greater impact on the fire service as a whole. and it's there's a lot of nuances, a lot of rabbit holes that we chase, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is um, I don't want to see grieving family members. I want firefighters to go home at the end of the day. And there's so many things that we could be doing that improves survivability and quality of life. I think the two are interrelated, and they're interdependent. So for me, and I guess somewhat speaking for everybody else in the foundation, that's our driving mantra.
So the NFFF, obviously, we, with the services, the memorial is to memorialize those that have lost their life, paid the ultimate sacrifice. But the other hand of the NFFF is to make sure that those deaths don't occur, right? And I think sometimes we lose vision of that within the fire service. We just think, oh, NFFF, all they do is stair climbs in the memorial. And for those people that maybe that's all they know, what else do you want, the fire service to remember about what services NFFF provides?
Exactly what you said. Most people don't realize, and honestly, there's some parts of the country that we've been to that may not even be clear on the basic mission of the foundation, which is to honor fallen firefighters. But really, the mission of the NFFF is threefold. The first is to honor America's fallen heroes. The second is to provide support for their families, and we do that through various programs, including assistance with filing for PSOB, counseling, and that kind of thing. And then the third, and this is where I come in, is work to reduce preventable line of duty death and injury. And we do that through a number of programs. But most people, the ones that have heard and are familiar with the NFFF, it's that first mission that's where their mind goes. Is the NFFF is there to honor America's fallen heroes. And absolutely we do that. And you know what? We also honor fallen heroes through those other two missions, those core missions, and that is providing for their family, and that is working in their memory to reduce preventable line of duty death.
I think that's a huge part of that is that, we can all help in, donating and helping with NFFF, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. But the other part about it, I think, is, the true brotherhood or sisterhood that we always talk about fire service. Well, that is helping your brother or your sister not get into a position where they have to be honored, right? Like it's taking care of yourself. It's promoting health. It's, promoting better and best practices. And that's kind of what your new role is all about, correct?
That's absolutely what my role is all about. Yes, sir.
And in that new role, let's talk about that a little bit. So, obviously you're really passionate about and it's kind of odd because right on one hand, you want to honor the fallen. On the other hand, we don't want any fallen. So it's almost like the business model is to keep ourselves out of business. It sounds odd, right? Through through the programming.
Yeah, and that's true. Our goal, of course, is to eliminate line of duty death. But the reality is our job is dangerous. We're not going to eliminate it, but we can reduce common threads to preventable line of duty death. We can examine what we do to find better ways to do it. I think one thing that drives me is I'm forever curious, and I'm never satisfied with status quo. One of the mantras as a fire chief was that I had was there's always a better way to do something. We just haven't discovered it yet. But we need to be forever curious, forever learning, trying to discover that we don't know. There's always going to be something out there killing firefighters. Let's find out what that is and do everything we can to prevent it. As Billy Goldfeder said that, you could be doing everything right, but sometimes something is just going to go catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
But if we're doing the right things for the right reasons, there'll be a reduction in the preventable line of duty death.
Yeah, sometimes crap happens.
Sometimes it happens, right?
Yeah, we have to do everything that we can to minimize the risk. And so let's talk about the programming. As you've gotten in March, and what are some of the initiatives and programs that we have going right now with NFFF, and then where do you see it going, and where kind of is your passion, or what initiatives would you like to kind of drive?
Sure. So there's a lot of different programs. We have about 18 in-person core courses that we can deliver, and they're largely leadership based. We have the Fire Hero Learning Network, which is an online access. Firefighters can go and take free training. And depending on the state they're at, they can get continuing education credit for a lot of those, just depending on what their local requires. We have documentaries. We put out a Memorial Monday, which is a remembrance to a past fire that killed firefighters. So there's a number of different things in that regard. We run our advocate program, which, there's 1.2, 1.4 million firefighters across the United States, and there's very small staff with the foundation. So to get our message out, to deliver these free courses, everything that we provide is free of charge. To get out there, we need an army of volunteers. And so we have those volunteers are called advocates, and they're from coast to coast, north to south, border to border. And we have about 250 advocates right now that volunteer their time in various ways. They either deliver in-person courses, or they staff booths to get the word out at conference and symposia. Some of them are engaged in public speaking. Some of them will just go visit and spread the word of the NFFF to neighboring fire departments and just let them know what we offer. And then we also have a program called it's a fellowship. And for a limited number of people every year, we'll soon be advertising for cohort number 5. We offer a fellow program, which is a deeper dive into academia, case study. We do staff rides or exposure and networking with emerging leaders or upcoming leaders in the fire service to be the champions of tomorrow. But the goal is to educate them, to give them more tools for their toolbox when they talk to peers, policymakers, regulators, legislators on firefighter survivability and quality of life issues. So the expectation is we'll put you through this fellowship for 12 to 18 months. At the end of that period, which, by the way, to graduate, they have to perform a practicum that relates in some way to what they've learned. But in exchange for that, they will be the new champion for survivability and quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are programs already established, and of course we're going to list all of these and link to the Fire Hero university, I guess, or educational courses. Mm-hmm. And also they can get information on the advocate and the fellowship, I think, via NFFF. Yes. And we'll leave links of all that. So these are programs that you're continually just growing and working to improve. And then now, as you get into this role, where else, or where do you see that, your passion is going to drive you, or that, I shouldn't say lacking, but where would you like to kind of expand that to?
So first and foremost, kind of at the foundation of fire service programs are the 16 firefighter life safety initiatives. And those, actually the genesis for those began in 2004. So last summer, we had the 20th anniversary of the first Life Safety Summit. Through a series of, I believe, 3 or 4 summits, these 16 initiatives were born, with the theory that if we can embed these 16 initiatives into the mainstream fire service, that we could drastically reduce line of duty death and injury. And now we're 20 years into it. Last July, we had our 20th anniversary summit where we re-examined the 16 initiatives. And while they all remain relevant in some regard, we've made progress in many. Some can be combined. Some may no longer be as relevant as they may have been. For example, the research component, we have made great progress in research. And so while the demand to start research may not be there, the demand to keep it going and to expand it, it definitely is. So we've made progress there. And the result is we come up with a model that will soon be released that has reduced the initiatives basically to 12, and they fall under 4 different pillars with 3 different perspectives. But essentially, these 12 incorporate all of the original 16 in one way, shape, or form, but they're built to be a little more relevant to the or understandable to the boots on the ground firefighter. So they're not so much an abstract ideology; they're more of an action item. I can do this to impact the outcome. And those will be released fairly soon. So with that, how do we get the word out that we have these new initiatives and this new model? And we do that through our various means, through podcasts, such as
through the Better Every Shift podcast,
and be able to talk about them. And then we'll do through video, interactive conferencing. I've already given a couple presentations on it already. But we do that through our volunteers and our volunteer advocates. We fully recognize 250 advocates are not enough to reach 1.4 million firefighters across the United States. And so we are actively recruiting. We have an initiative with the Metro Fire Chiefs, for example. It was one of our advocates. He's the advocate coordinator now, John Kane. It was his brainchild to have at least one advocate in every Metro fire department across the United States. And so working with Secretary Otto Drodes of the Metro Fire Chiefs, we've got that word out to the Metropolitan Fire Chiefs, and we're making great progress in that regard. As a matter of fact, I'll just give a kudos to John Kane and his team. We've signed an MOU with the New Orleans Fire Department to train their fire training folks to deliver NFFF courses. We've recently signed one with Baton Rouge, making great progress in Louisiana. And those similar stories, we can hopscotch across the nation. So that is awesome. Similarly, we're gaining participation from wildland, the wildland community, the volunteer community, just making some great progress. A year ago, when John Kane and I first came on board as contractors with the NFFF, we had about 140 advocates, and now, as I mentioned, we're up to 250, and we're adding every day.
Yeah, if a chief wants to, get involved with that, can they reach out to you, or can they get in touch with you via the NFFF website, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. They can get in touch with us multiple different ways. They can NFFF website. They can email me at dkistner@firehero.org. Get in touch with John Kane, same jkane@firehero.org. Just a number of different ways they can get in touch with us. Absolutely.
Because there's programming already there, and I see this as a, fire officer. These are done for you trainings for the rest of your crew, right? Like
yes.
That are pertinent, up to date, research based. And I know that over the last couple of years, I think you and I have even been involved indirectly in some programming just to evaluate, how to, deliver these programs more efficiently and effectively, right? Quick hitters, infographics. And I know that you guys have done a great job to, kind of change the way that we do these presentations. And that's part of this growth I say growth spurt with NFFF, but it's really just a transition into more of a modern teaching kind of environment. And so reaching out to Metro Chiefs, great idea. But then also, right, like if a chief from, volunteer department or a non-Metro department reaches out, you're not going to turn them away, correct?
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely not. Yeah. And we're doing similar outreach with VCOS and other different organizations that focus primarily on combination volunteer fire departments. The wildland community, we recently did a couple of listening sessions at the IFC WUI conference where we were interacting with wildland firefighters. What was really interesting to me, and this speaks highly of industry related to the fire service, we held 2 listening sessions in Provo, Utah last year, bringing wildland firefighters together with structural firefighters to talk about common concerns responding together in the wildland urban interface. And that kind of led to what we're calling taking it on the road. And this August, we're going to Hays, Kansas, where we're going to meet similarly with a group of structural firefighters, wildland firefighters, municipal city administrators, community leaders, and we're going to talk about issues in the WUI and how do we make that community safer, which would result in the less we have to respond as a fire service, the less the risk. And so if we can promote the prevention side as well, then that reduces risk to our firefighters.
Yeah, community risk reduction is is a huge part of the fire service. Now, firefighters, when I say that right now, probably 3 or 4 people just turned off the podcast, but we have to understand it's the intention of that is to not put us out of business. The intention is to keep us as safe as possible. Correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Us and the communities. And so elaborate a little bit. Like you also have a very good big passion for the community risk reduction part of NFFF and so via programming and just awareness, correct?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There will never, the double negative, there will never not be a need for the fire service. I mean, will always be there. The United States Fire Service, however, is primarily response oriented, where other industrialized nations may be primarily prevention oriented. Um, and there's probably a lot of different reasons for that. But if we could somehow flip the switch to where we're more prevention oriented and we have less emergencies to respond to, then of course that's going to reduce the risk. And the healthier fire service is directly related to a healthier community. And so, yeah, I believe in that. And preventing the preventable is one program that the foundation offers that is kind of geared primarily in that regard, and model code adoption and staying current with code adoption and taking it serious. Um, this program we're doing with the wildland urban interface, that's another method, and that's interesting. It's an interesting topic because as a fire service, we're resistant to something that we fear may change what we do. Don't make it to where I don't have to fight fires anymore or have to run emergencies. And so there's that natural resistance. I say natural. We're firefighters. So, I mean, we
Yeah.
do it for many different reasons, including the adrenaline, the excitement. Um, but there's a new trend that's been going on since 2012, 2013, and especially on the EMS side, and when that is with community healthcare, where different ways of pre-hospital healthcare delivery. It's kind of it's really exciting how it's changing. It's no longer we only run to emergencies. It's not only we just do code 3. It's how can we impact patient outcomes so they don't need to call 911. And if they're not calling 911 as much, then those are fewer responses on the road where we're going code 3, reduces the risk to firefighters, which 25% of all line of duty death and injuries related to responding to returning from emergencies. You reduce that, you improve the health of the community. It's just a win-win. We need to look at ways to do things different to impact outcome instead of singularly focused, just respond to the incident, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think as a firefighter, right, the firefighter mindset is what you're really talking about is emergencies are always going to happen, and we're going to have to always be ready for those. Fires are going to continue to happen. Like we see the insurgence of lithium ion batteries and some of them failing and the different technologies there. Of course, there's going to be fires, right? But with a good community risk reduction mindset, we're not going to be going to possibly like those falls as often, or the calls where it's maybe isn't an emergency, but to that particular individual, they had nowhere else to go. They didn't know what other resources there were. In the same regards to on the fire side a little bit, like we can prevent those catastrophic fires where, a scooter starts on fire blocking a doorway, thus putting us in a very dangerous situation to try to make rescues where, right. I think that's the point that we as firefighters need to embrace is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. I recall when I first entered the fire service 40 years ago, 42 years ago now, one activity that seemed to have at least in my area, kind of seemed to disappear is we did home inspections. We would, once or twice a week, we would just canvass the neighborhoods and knock on doors and distribute information. And where they would allow us, we would enter the homes and do just a safety inspection. And where we saw hazards, we would call them out for the individual. And it was a good community project, community relations builder. It indirectly, it kind of taught us what the buildings were like. And, if we did have a fire in this particular housing addition, what are the challenges we're going to face? So it was very beneficial, but we kind of went away from that. And I think it would be nice if we kind of, it doesn't have to be exactly like we did it 40 years ago. We did it in ties in our hat also. Maybe we don't do that anymore. If there's some way we could engage with the community and uh, think of just be proactive and innovative. How innovative? How can we get in? How can we get into their homes or um, transfer the knowledge on prevention or get the community excited about prevention somehow? But if the bottom line, if we can stop or reduce the number of fires or incidents from happening, then we greatly reduce the risk to firefighters.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision we make as a company is about you, our customer. We wouldn't be where we are today without you, and we don't take that lightly. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com for everything but the truck, and shop our family of brands, including Streamlight, MSA, Lion, Fleer, and more. Now let's get back to the show.
Well, a lot of this turns up, a common element in a lot of this is leadership. Mm-hmm. And, you had mentioned too on the Fire Hero Learning Network, there's a lot about leadership. Mm-hmm. Leaders stepping up and saying, hey, we need to change our focus to more preventative things. I think both on firefighter health and on community health. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's what we were just talking about with community risk reduction. But let's hone in a little bit on the different, what are the different leadership categories or trainings that, that the Hero Learning Network has and why it's such a passion for you and for the NFFF.
Yeah, well, it's a passion because you're right. It all begins with leadership. You have to have a courageous leader that's able to motivate their firefighters to go the path that they need them to go. And that takes courage, and it's not easy. And quite often it's easier just to take the path of least resistance and go along to get along. And that's not necessarily a good thing. But in that regard, some of the programs we have, a couple that I'll highlight is we have attributes of leading. And that has a number of different leadership traits, just one word leadership traits that the course will have a video kind of explaining what it is. And then it's a facilitated discussion with the participants. And they identify just traits that are important to them related to that one particular word, maybe identify some individuals that exhibit that trait, what they could do to themselves, actually, to improve themselves to exhibit that trait, or maybe they're strong in it already. But it's the important thing is it's a facilitated audience participative course. So it's not they're just listening to a lecture getting beat to death by PowerPoint. It's a interactive participative type program. And that one, depending on how much time allotted, that could be an all-day program. It's very popular. It's very good. And then another one is
I've done that program, by the way, and I love.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, it was really one of those things where a light bulb went off and went, oh, here we are. We're talking about and applying the different things, the wellness, grit, courage. Mm-hmm. I think if I can remember, humility, right? Like all of these great attributes of leadership. And what I really liked about it was then, people kind of dug in deep and then thought about, well, here's an example of where a leader was courageous or, promoted wellness or, really was a very good demonstration of humility and how it really applied to, I think a lot of us within that course could step back and go, okay, this is how this can be applied in my culture. So just a little promo for the attributes of leading. Great course to do, by the way. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I had
no, that's okay. A couple of other personal favorites I have is orienting, and that's retooling the company officer's thought process. So orienting is it's kind of based on the military OODA loop in situational awareness, crew resource management, and that one uses some fireground examples and then some not fireground examples to prove a point. One of them, if I'll okay, spoiler alert, if you haven't had the class yet, one of the videos in that particular program is highlights lion tamers, and the lion tamers get into trouble. And so when they get into trouble, they keep trying to get the lions back in line by what they've been trying all along. That's not working, but they continue and they continue and they continue, and it doesn't work. And so kind of a funny anecdote, then they start applying water to the lions and they back off, and then the lions are really subdued with copious amounts of water. So but the metaphor is there, is that you keep doing things that you've always done in the same way, then you can't expect different results.
Right.
And then the other metaphor that can be used for is complacency towards the risk. That maybe you've been doing this for so long and have never had an issue, and we're what we call accidentally successful. And then all of a sudden, something happened. That one lion was having a bad day or was in a bad mood or something triggered it, and bad things start happening. And then we revert back to just reflex or the familiar or something we've done a million times, instead of rethinking our strategy because the situation is different. We maintain what we do until you do something different. And like John Tippett likes to say, everything's solved by copious amounts of water. And that's in that video. So that's another one. And then another favorite of mine is 12 O'Clock High Leadership. And it's based on the movie. And it's got, I believe, 8 or 12 characters that are very distinct and different. And you try to identify the leadership trait of those individuals and then how their personality or their traits change based on the circumstance and what they're facing. And then they talk about a thing called maximum effort, and that can only be sustained for a short period of time before the individual starts breaking down, which I think also has application into the fire service.
Oh, big time. Yeah. In a lot of different realms, especially like, health and fitness and wellness, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
But you know what? I love the point about that you made there at the end. It's just about, how you maximum effort eventually can lead to a burnout or some type of situation. And so let's shift a little bit to firefighter health and wellness. I know you've been a big advocate for that. And I mean, where do you see is the biggest health issue? I mean, obviously there's cancer and there's mental health. I mean, is there something we're missing, or is there something that you see with a different kind of lens when it comes to firefighter health?
I don't know if I see it through a different kind of lens, but this is the way I look at it. Absolutely, occupational cancer and mental health are two of the biggest challenges in the fire service. That doesn't mean cardiovascular health has not gone away. That is still there. Keeping ourselves in optimum fitness is still there. Reducing tobacco, nicotine, alcohol consumption. Those are the things. Pick your vice that are just never going to go away. But the way I'm looking at it, and what is kind of motivated me to the position, I guess, that I am, or at least try to impact more on a national level, is these are not new problems. These are not new challenges. The association between firefighting and occupational cancer was studied as early as 1959, and they weren't able to make a correlation then, but there was 1 or 2 studies that came out in the 80s where they did. And there was a book came out in the 1990s. I think it was 1990, may have been published in 1992 by Deborah Wallace, which frankly, by the way, just make an announcement that version 2 is they just signed a contract. Yep. In the Mouth of the Dragon and the dangers of fighting fires and with plastics. And it largely, at the time, it largely went either unnoticed or it really didn't make mainstream fire department promotional exams. And, probably for a lot of different reasons. But my motivation has been, I've seen the problem for years. And it seems like some of the decision process really hasn't changed. And I don't mean to characterize it that we haven't made progress. We absolutely have. But it's frustrating to me, having spent time in every position in the fire service, that we knew about this stuff then, And it's 40 years later. It seems like only now we're making significant progress. Think of the impact we could have had if the behavioral changes we have now occurred 20, 30, 40 years ago. How many lives that may have impacted, how much further down the road we would be today. It's just incredible. And so I'm hoping that we can influence my generation, that we're in the golden years of our fire service career, that we can leave that impression among emerging leaders is don't wait 20, 30, 40 years. Work to fix the problems that you identified today, and maybe set a foundation for examining what are the problems are we going to discover 5 years from now, 10 years from now that we don't know about now.
Yeah. In that book too, a lot of, from what I remember reading on that is a lot of it was talking about just how these, articles that within homes are burning different with
Yes.
higher temperatures and the chemicals that are contained within
Yes.
them. Correct. And
Yes.
so you're saying in the 90s, we were starting to read about this. We kind of brushed over it, which is goes back to, what you think we had mentioned a little bit about, we're more reactive than we are proactive. And the theme is community risk reduction, but we're also talking about that when in the kind of realms of our own health and wellness. And so that's a passion, I think, of a lot of the members, leadership of the NFFF, and that, through the different courses, hoping to transfer that on to the rest of the fire service through either advocates or our listeners. Our listeners should be right now on the Fire Hero Learning Network looking and signing up for these courses. And hopefully they are doing that and then transferring that information on. So you're seeing the cancer epidemic and maybe the reactivity instead of being proactive when we look at health and wellness. We have made progress.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to see, and let's say, what is your real goal for the position and your kind of tenure there with NFFF?
Plain and simple, impact. Want to have impact. With regard to behaviors, health and wellness in 2024, the NFFF, we conducted a survey titled just that, firefighter behaviors and viewpoints. We tried to establish a baseline, like where are we? We have the 16 initiatives that have been around for about 20 years. We've got a lot of research out there now. Is there anything foundational that, maybe a single dashboard we could go to that said, well, how do firefighters feel about wearing SCBA? Do they really? How do they feel about searching vacant buildings, or how do they feel about
Wearing seatbelts, right?
Wearing seatbelts, exactly. And so we thought, okay, let's do a survey. And so we did the survey, and we're fleshing it out now, including relationships between, does it make a difference that you've been in the fire department or fire service for 5 years or 20 years? Does that impact high risk behavior or viewpoints? Have you been intimately involved with a firefighter line of duty death, and has that impacted your behavior or viewpoints? Have you been involved in a close call, and does that impact? And then does your rank impact? And certainly all these things do in some regard. And some of the data that we're fleshing out now, which is it's pretty fascinating. But there's 3 high risk behaviors that we probably have a little more education to do in the fire service based on that study. And one of them is the use of SCBA, especially if operating in defensive mode, or if you're outside in some regard. I think Tucson Fire Department is even doing a study on the pump panel operators wearing it.
Yeah. I was actually just there, and some of their preliminary findings that the pump operator is having PFAS levels 35 times higher than the frontline firefighters. So they're actually putting their AEs on air, between the diesel, the secondhand smoke, and all the different kind of chemicals that are in the air. So stay tuned to that. I don't want to misspeak. We're going to try to get Dr. Burgess on, but it just brings up a very valid point, right? Like we should be wearing, when the mask is on, it should stay on, right?
Absolutely. And I can already foresee, because you can almost guess where the research is going to go, but you can see the resistance that is going to occur in the fire service with pump panel operators not wanting to wear their SCBA. So there's going to be an educational component there. We also have to do a little more education on uh, conducting indiscriminate searches of vacant, abandoned, or dilapidated buildings. It seems to be, according to our survey, an uptick in the number of firefighters that believe that those searches are absolutely necessary. And it's been identified by Safety, Health, Survival section and other fire service leaders that searching, and I should characterize it indiscriminate searching, just for the sake of it, can lead to firefighter fatality. That there's been several that led to firefighter fatality where there's no one inside. So there's some education we have to do there. I'm not saying that you don't need to do it at times. Absolutely, you need to do it at times, but the indiscriminate part is what I'm referring to. And then some more education on training. There's a large number of firefighters that responded to the survey that feel that they get all the training they need from their particular training division, which is fine. They probably do a really good job. But my recommendation to the fire service is don't let that be your sole source of information. You need to have multiple points of information. And so those were some of the things that are being fleshed out of that survey, and we'll be presenting it research symposium in Tulsa in July, some of that data, and then Science to the Stations in November, and some various other places. So
excellent. I'll be there in November. We need to have you back on because there's a couple of big projects that are coming out that I think we all need to know about and talk about, from the life safety initiatives to also the results of the survey. And you've been in since March, and I'm sure your head is spinning with a lot of different knowledge and just the interactions that you've had. Of course, there's a lot of great leaders that are involved with NFFF, and they all, I think you guys do a really good job of being very unified with messaging. And messaging is that we need to prevent the preventables, right? And take care of each other and take care of ourselves. And so I guess one of the final questions I have for you is, what are 5 things you wish every firefighter would either know or do?
Wow. I don't know that I could limit it to 5.
That's a tough one, right?
That's a tough one. Yeah. I don't know how I would make it into a succinct 1 or 2 word, but risk reduction for cancer. There's a lot of best practice recommendations out there on what a firefighter can do to limit or reduce their risk for occupational cancer. But as a fire chief, as a company officer, battalion chief, I just over and over and over, even though policies may be in place, they're not always followed. And often they're not followed because they're not convenient, or if I just 5 more minutes and I can get this done. And there's always some reason to violate the policy, but that it adds up. And some people that could be 1 exposure. Some people it takes 20 exposures, but there's too many firefighters dying of cancer. And it's not just about the firefighter. It's about the family. Typically we think in terms of the job. We have to do this, we have to do that. But we have a family waiting for us at home. So I think it's our obligation, it's our duty to do the best we can to reduce our risk. So that would be one thing. And similarly, cardiovascular health. There's still 50% of firefighters dying in the line of duty are related to cardiovascular health. If there's a way that we could make, I'll say this, Matt Tobio, when he was chair of the Safety, Health, and Survival section, he said that was his goal, is to be able to provide and fund a medical physical, 1852 physical for every firefighter in the United States. And I think there's been a lot of progress made since then. You got to establish those lofty goals to reach that, though. But I thought that was a very courageous statement of him to say that. And there's probably a lot of people that kind of roll their eyes. Oh yeah, that'll never happen. But you still had to have that dreamer to set that expectation. So I would say occupational cancer prevention, keep yourself in tip-top shape, because it is a dangerous job. And I would also encourage firefighters to learn from themselves. They're going to have challenges throughout their career, and the crowd is going to want to go one way when best practice may say go the other way. There may be this influence or that influence. but deep down in their mind, they know the right thing to do. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure to maintain status quo as opposed to um, necessarily change behavior where it needs to be changed. So that recommendation would be uh, think for yourself. Think for yourself. Come to your own conclusions. I'm not saying disregard logical or lawful orders, but what I'm saying is where it makes sense, think for yourself, and be the best you can be, and know the most you can about your job. Be proficient at your job. Somebody said train, and then when you're done training, train some more. That can't be said enough. Just with the caveat, train the right way. If you're training the wrong way with the wrong things or taking shortcuts, then that's worse. So train the right way, then train some more. And I think that was only 4.
That's 4.
Yeah.
All good ones, by the way. And there's so many ways we could take each one, but this is great. One more little nugget for us.
Don't disregard research. Research is very important. And when I say don't disregard it, what I mean is don't ignore it. And when research is suggesting best practice goes a different direction, then maybe we need to consider going that direction. Discovery alone is not enough to motivate somebody to want to change. But we need to open our minds. We need to not be so fixated that this is the way we've always done it, or this is tradition, or this is culture. What makes sense, and what's going to improve survivability, what's going to improve quality of life, what's going to help me get home to my family at the end of the day and enjoy a long and healthy retirement after my fire service career.
Yeah. Oh, great. 5 great nuggets to live by. I of course, I wrote my own little version and notes on it. And for our listeners, I hope a couple of those things really, sink in. And, because of course, all those things can improve you as a firefighter and as a person, which, is the essence of what we're talking about on the podcast, better every shift. And the NFFF can greatly help you be a better person, better firefighter, not just help honor those that have lost their lives, support their families. But I think, what we emphasized today was the preventative side of the NFFF. And I just appreciate you coming on and talking about it, Doc. And I love to see the passion that comes out with, especially, as you said, you retired, but then you got this opportunity, and it's a very similar story to a lot of the leaders within NFFF. And I've had a very great opportunity with Chief Lieb through the First Responder Center for Excellence, which we didn't dive too much into, but that's another arm of NFFF that gets involved with the health and wellness as well. And, and Victor and the passions that he has. But I think we, in the fire service, have a great team with NFFF. We just need to support you. So how can we support NFFF and get more involved?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we're trying to increase our advocate pool. And if you become a NFFF advocate or an NFFF advocate, it opens all kinds of networking doors, training opportunities. It helps you get engaged in spreading the word to where you're delivering courses. But the opportunities dramatically increase as you become an advocate. And, you're only limited to your imagination. We tell our advocates that we want them to be innovative and think of creative ways to get survivability, quality of life at the forefront of the firefighter's mind. And I say that, I think I need to go on record as saying this too. That doesn't mean that you can't be an aggressive firefighter. All that means is we're just being smart about it. Yeah. You still got to do what needs to be done. If Mrs. Jones is in needs rescue, we're certainly going to do that. But just be a little bit smarter about it.
You're right. Calculated.
I like that word. Calculated.
Educatedly aggressive.
There you go. There you go.
And I think, that word aggressive, that's worth a whole nother podcast we could talk about. But
absolutely.
I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And then pre-fire and post-fire, take care of yourself and those around you, right? I think that's the other part about it. And
Absolutely.
all of this encompasses just improving as an individual and as a firefighter, as a leader. And of course, I got to wrap it up with the question and the purpose of the whole podcast, and kind of relate it back to you, Dr. Danny. What are you doing to get better personally?
I'm staying actively involved in the research. I'm taking better care of my health. I think I've always, when I was before I retired, I was working out fairly regular, and since retired, I have an active lifestyle, though I don't probably go to the gym as much. But I really have started taking better care of my health, and the annual exams that I'm supposed to be getting, and the cancer screenings, and everything else, and I'm paying better attention to it, and I'm hoping to enjoy a long, healthy retirement. So,
Well, many years with NFFF, right? Like
many years with the NFFF.
Right. Yeah, and it's a lot. It's a little more motivating when you practice. You really are preaching this, and I know personally, just doing this program helps me be a better person because I talk about it and I get motivated to do it. And do you find that same thing? Because you're going around talking about these programs, you really are feeling like, hey, I got to take time for this, right?
I think my mind is going to be, so active as soon as we get off this call that I'm going to start writing and probably responding to a bunch of different things. And we've got a couple of other research projects kind of in the mix that we're designing right now, and another course delivery. So I'll probably work on that here.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's good. Then I did my job to try to, help motivate you to help us, which is really the purpose of NFFF. Again, Dr. Danny, thank you. Congratulations on the new position.
Thank you.
Looking forward to many more conversations. And of course, we talked about some of the new initiatives that are coming forth from NFFF, and we look forward to having some great conversations about that. And, for our listeners, by the way, please check out Fire Hero Learning Network. We'll have links within the show notes. We'll try to list also a way that you can get in touch with Dr. Danny if your department wants to get more involved, if you want to get more involved personally with NFFF, which we greatly encourage. Just like encouraging you to go to our YouTube channel, check us out there. Check us out on the Better Every Shift banner on firerescue1.com, and also to email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1. Rate, review the show, send us some comments. Let us know if you think we're onto something or on something. And Dr. Danny, great advice, by the way. And I wrote down my notes on it, but I think we all need to take better care of ourselves to reduce cancer, to improve our health, to really do the right thing and train, and then train some more, all in the intention of making the fire service better. Because in essence, what we should be striving for every single day is to learn something, to do something, and then to share something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.